Hi, everyone. Welcome to Play by Play Theater's Q&A.
Here he is.
Where we are featuring a variety of entertainment professionals, particularly in the theater business. And I'm Mary.
I'm Carolyn.
We're really,
again,
we're still the same. And thank you for watching. Yesterday we had the operatic soprano, Yvonne Fraser from Germany. Today, we are a little closer to home. From Chicago, we have not one, but two special guests. And they happen to be married to each other. They both, with amazing performing credits, are now, one is a choreographer and dance instructor. The other is a college professor and director. And then he does say sometime performer. Nonetheless, together they are truly sunshine on this cloudy day. How'd you like that?
That's good.
Here are Shanna VanDerwerker and Justin Brill. Woo, 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 woo! Yay! I sang for you. Semi.
You did. Thank you.
I will have danced, but I can't dance. Don't ask me.
And Mary, your moves.
How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're hanging in there. Yeah.
Now, what were you guys? Has this pandemic affected you from day one? Were you in a project or?
Yes, I was actually.
What happened to you guys?
I was just finishing up the first week of rehearsal with the Chicago premiere of Freaky Friday for Porchlight Music Theater. And and it got canceled, fully canceled. So that was a real bummer. We were, we spent the first week of that rehearsal process just sort of one level up from pre-production. We were working with all of the younger actors that were playing the teenage roles and just creating movement and really loose staging. And we were having a blast. And then, just felt like the rug got pulled out from under us. And then, it just keeps trickling down. And both of us in our teaching, we had to move classes into the remote realm of teaching dancing and acting classes through the computer screen. So that was intense, to say the least.
Isn't it amazing Isn't it amazing how in a live venue that we are accustomed to, we suddenly have to adjust into the screen? Yeah, look at that. She loves you guys.
already.
I tell you guys, your reputation precedes you.
Oh, no. Yeah, it is crazy to have to move everything into this tiny little computer screen. And at first, I feel like we were all really concerned about how we were going to dance in our own homes and our own spaces and get that information out there. But I mean, it was difficult, don't get me wrong, but I do feel like I maybe had it a little bit easier than you with your scene study courses.
Why would that be? Why would dance be, why would that be easier?
Well, I think for me, I'll explain the easier and why you can maybe explain why acting was harder. The dance, I could really, when you're studying, you can be really focused on yourself. And I think in reflection of the past 8 weeks, it was really actually nice that they were taken out of the studio and taken away from the mirror. Wow. They could learn to really feel the movement and feel the technique in their bodies rather than constantly watch themselves in the mirror. And you can take that time to really focus on yourself rather than having to necessarily interact with so many people. So it's more work for me as the instructor because I have to watch these tiny little squares. Yeah. But I think it's a little bit more if the student is accepting of it. It's a little bit more rewarding for them because I think that they can focus only on themselves and not compare themselves to what's around them.
Oh, that's really
I
good.
love that,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And explain why acting was much harder.
I think in several ways. One way being that because everything happened so fast as far as transitioning to remote and students having to move out of, student housing, dorm rooms, figure out new living situations, it just, we never know what students' home environments are like. So to bring them into a vulnerable space to be able to work on their craft, to be able to dive into their craft, all of our home spaces have such a kind of an emotional component to them. So how we work in our home space when it comes to vulnerability and acting and performance is very different than a neutral space or a classroom space in which we've created the energy for exploration and vulnerability and kind of different versions of ourselves, right? So I think that having students work in their home environments becomes just a very different paradigm, which brings in a lot more challenges in terms of a student being able to kind of dive into the work where they might have differently dove into it in a classroom setting. And then there's the practicalities of scene work. How do you get two people working on a scene in a virtual environment?
Yeah.
And because I teach primarily in the world of musical theater, how do you add the music component to it? So doing musical scene work became virtually impossible in the remote setting. So we kind of pulled back and looked at how we can still accomplish the learning outcomes as far as progress as an actor, but in solo pieces.
Sure.
Give them technique work and critical thinking work that they can do on their own, and sort of mindfully scrap the idea that ensemble work, that those types of projects where you're getting in a room and listening and collaborating with your scene partner in a musical scene is not quite as possible as it is in person.
So you're both working on people basically helping individuals perfect themselves, the monologue, the solo dance, to feel it in your body, to learn more about yourself. That's turning this obstacle of a pandemic into an opportunity to address what we don't often address. There's not much time.
Yeah, totally.
Do that, right?
And it's trying to encourage them to reframe the idea of community also, because I think what's so powerful about the arts and what's so powerful about the exploration of it, the study of it, is that when you're in that room with a group of people and you're collaborating and you're sharing and you're encouraging and you're supporting and you're learning together, that aspect of the remote learning is lost in one way. And can you reframe your thinking about it, of community, of support, of connection and collaboration into a remote environment? It's tricky because you're having to just rethink how you feel about technology in certain ways.
Sure.
And reframe your approach to how you're interacting with it. And that's a challenging process, and it requires a lot of vulnerability and honesty and humanness on the instructor side of things, to try and work through your own ups and downs with it. And also just encourage whatever growth is possible for the student in their individual setting.
So that's what's happening with all educators today. The elementary school teacher, the college professor, the dance instructor, different crafts. It's amazing. I bet you as well never expected something like this would happen. I mean,
I definitely can say I did not expect the entire world to be shut down.
Right. I mean, like we talked with Ivana yesterday in Germany. Hello, gone. She's got nothing left for the year. I have nothing left for the year. I don't know. I mean, because theater, let's go back to live theater.
Here, speaking of educators.
There she's one.
A friend of mine, she's an elementary school teacher, and she's shifting to that online. It's tough. It's so tough.
And then trying to
finding that balance and
people to help.
And like you said, making sure it works for everybody because everyone's home life is different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. So with theater, we don't know when it will come back. We're not the normal job. There's other jobs will come back. School could come back in a different way, not sure. But you're both performers, and you're a choreographer and a director. So
Very close to people.
You're very, yes. When you do live theater, I mean, dance needs, you both and actors need the other people. You need them to be present, right?
Yeah.
So this is a real bummer, is what I'm saying.
Bummer.
That's just obvious. That's just obvious. Are there plans to continue Freaky Friday?
No, Freaky Friday got totally canceled. Yeah, it was a real, that one was hard. Then the next show we were supposed to collaborate on a production of Mamma Mia, directing and choreographing. And that was supposed to be happening right now. Thankfully, as of right now, they have pushed it to the end of the year. So fingers crossed, it might be able to happen. And then I was supposed to choreograph Legally Blonde at Porchlight. And that's kind of up in the air right now. It's hard because everywhere, all theater communities are, struggling and trying to find their way through it. Chicago, they're the heart of the theater community in Chicago are these really small, intimate theater spaces where, a lot of theaters have talked about, oh, well, when we come back, we'll go to half capacity. Well, half capacity at the Paramount Theater in Aurora is still 700 people, tons of space to spread them out. Half capacity at the Porchlight Theater, it's safely so that the audience is safe and the cast is safe. Half capacity is like 50 people. That's, not enough to sustain a show, let alone that environment. So, the Chicago theater community is constantly trying to figure out how they're going to get back up and running. And I think one idea that's tossed out there, none of it's official, but one idea that's tossed out there is when we do get back, do we do staged readings just to, keep the actors safe and the crew safe? And, then you can have limited seating because you're really just sort of paying for the time and the rights, versus a set, costumes, lighting, all of the other amazing elements that go into making a show.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that, but I don't know. I feel like for me as a creative, trying to create movement that is so integral to telling a story with extra restrictions of you can't touch that, you can't be there, you can't be I want to.
Missing that interaction.
Yeah, you're such a good storyteller through your choreography and movement. It's what the challenge for you is to make logical choices that feel like artistic choices.
Yeah. And you're already, as our times grow pre-pandemic, we've become much more aware of personal boundaries. And 10, 15 years ago when I started performing, you just picked your partner up and just went. And now you have to say, is it okay if I pick you up? Which is great. I love respecting that, and you have that level that we were already dealing with. And now we've got to deal with, the extra COVID things before we have the vaccine, if we try to go back without a vaccine. And so those sort of extra restrictions just feel so, I don't know paralyzing. They feel very paralyzing for me as a creative. And I am finding enjoyment. I'm not in love with it, but I'm finding enjoyment in creating movement for my classes in my small space, using our environment. With my college students, I played with a number from Freaky Friday that we were all in our computer screens, and then we pulled away from it and we came back to it using what we have, which is an exciting challenge. But, that is one-on-one.
Yeah.
But if I'm next to somebody, I don't know, it's just really...
It's it's impossible because dance has that wow factor, like you said. Just being able to lift somebody up. So now you have to
being able to just do that.
That would not be allowed.
Oh my gosh.
Mask on us and wrap us in some bubble wrap, and then we'll be allowed to do it.
Right. Remind us what that is.
That is from Singing in the Rain at the Fireside, starring Matt Daly, and myself is the Lady in Green. It was the first show that I choreographed at the Fireside, so thank you, Ed Flesh, for giving me that magical opportunity. And yeah,
that's a wow factor.
So.
Yeah, Justin, you had wow factor as well, but of course, for me, the wow dancing factor were your solo dance numbers, and make them laugh. And as well you did, not because of your tap dancing. I mean, it come off that way. Oops, it sounded.
This is good.
Oh, there you go.
And you're being.
But even that, they wouldn't be. I mean, because later he jumped on Matt's back. That wouldn't be allowed.
You can't do that now, right? Yeah, it's
going to this a little too close.
Yeah, too close. If their bows can touch, too close.
Yeah, yeah, that's really funny. Well, there you are. I mean, you obviously husband and wife, which is really nice. You collect. Yeah, are we? With Scrappy the dog, who made an appearance. We love Scrappy. And you do some collaborating now. Do you guys ever get a chance to do that? I mean, that was one show that you were both in together, which was awfully fun for all of us.
Yeah.
We choreographed and created a number. It was last year's gala, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We did.
Yeah. Oh, Dylan.
Oh, Dylan, one of our students.
Lots of love coming in.
Lots of love.
Yeah.
For Porchlight's Gala last year, we were able to collaborate and create a duet number. It had pieces of two different songs, and then we had a little dance break to it. So we were given the material and said, "Hey, go away, craft a little duet number with these two songs with a little dance break," and that was really fun to collaborate and dance and sing together because we.
I had to sing, Mary. And then with him, you imagine? What were they thinking?
In the business, he's known as a very compassionate performer. So you guys, you can collaborate together, and now you've been actually living together day in and day out, I presume. Which you do, right? Because you're working.
It's really, I mean, we called it the VanDerwerker Zoom University because in one room, Shanna was teaching her live dance class, so the music was blaring. You'd hear her shouting out words of encouragement. And then upstairs, I've got my headphones in. I'm looking at my screen, talking about like a deep acting moment. Try to just breathe and feel this moment, and you hear this 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, and Scrappy running back and forth, barking at every noise, like wanting attention. It was beautiful. It was beautiful chaos.
Well, that could be one of those things if you could create your own performance piece. VanDerwerker Studios.
We could write a one-act show probably about it.
One act. Play-by-play to put it on. Because, it involves two people and a dog. I think that's great.
Low budget.
So we could do it.
And we could do it online, so it'd be great. Right? I'm thinking. So, but let's go back to where you guys, I don't know if you started, where you met, if you met in school, or did you meet on the tours? I mean, talk about working together. Wicked and Beauty and Beast? Were you both in that too?
No. We met, very truncated long story. We both grew up in Maryland. Our dance teachers knew each other. We never met. Okay. We were in Pittsburgh in college at the same time. I was at Point Park. He was at Carnegie Mellon. Never met. We were in New York, and I was the assistant choreographer of the Broadway production of High Fidelity. choreographed by Christopher Gattelli, and Justin was in that show, and that's where we finally met.
I just want to let people know High Fidelity, because we did our research.
I think it's this.
Oh my God, there you are, babe.
Look at that
Where
hair.
are you? It's a big cast.
He's down at the bottom.
The bottom right. Oh,
There?
No, that's
oh
wrong.
my
Oh,
stars.
that's Robin.
Nice hair.
Were you at the recording?
I was not at the recording. Yeah, Justin had long hair back then.
Wow.
Look at that hair.
Yeah,
You're hip, cool, groovy, man.
together.
But was that music written by, it was Tom Kitt who wrote Next to Normal, am I correct?
You are correct.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm sure most people in theater, at least around here, would know Next to
Next to
Normal.
Tom
Yeah.
Kidd and Amanda Green of
Adolph Green.
Oh, Adolph, I met
Body.
him at his house. I met him, yeah.
Oh.
Smelled him. But anyway, that must have been a real rush, even though it didn't.
High Fidelity was super. It's a super fun show. It didn't have a long life on Broadway, but unfortunately, but it's a really good show, and I think that we've seen it performed here in Chicago twice, done regionally, and when you get it down to that smaller scale, I mean, the book's written by David Lindsay Abaire. Hello.
Yeah.
So it's really, really good. And it's a bummer that it didn't get a longer life, but we're still married. So, you know.
Yeah. Wait, how did you just go to an open call or an agent submission, or how did you get in there to audition?
High Fidelity. How did they did a reading of it, and there was the person that I actually understudied in All Shook Up, Mark Price, was in the reading and the workshop versions of the show. And I believe that he went to I believe that Mary Poppins was about to happen at the time. I might have my dates mixed up, but there was another Broadway show, another project that he moved on to do. So there was a slot opening up from the workshop to the out-of-town rehearsal process of High Fidelity. I was doing Rent at the time. I was a swing in Rent on Broadway. Yeah. And so there were similar, Bernie Telsey's casting office casts, at the time they cast All Shook Up and Rent and High Fidelity. And there were some similar people on the music side. Stephen Aremus was the overall music arranger for, music supervisor for All Shook Up and for High Fidelity as well. So there were some, I was in some creative lines. So they actually brought me in for the show, I think 4 times for High Fidelity before I actually got cast in the show.
What was your first New York show, Justin?
My first New York show was actually an opera at the Metropolitan Opera. I played
Puck.
Yeah, I played Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream at the Metropolitan.
Hey, Justin, look at that.
Look at that guy.
We're particularly fond of A Midsummer Night's Dream here.
Yeah. Oh, I love that picture. The countertenor, David Daniels, just this gorgeous flowing voice. And, as that show, Puck does most of his interaction with Oberon. Mm-hmm. And he was just a delight to work with. I mean, that was a dream come true working at the Mets. My family story.
I mean, come on.
My grandparents met growing up in Brooklyn, and my grandparents always had an affinity for music. These are my grandparents on my mother's side. So they used to listen to the Saturday afternoon Met opera broadcasts on the radio. So mm-hmm. it's the way that it went down. Unfortunately, my grandfather had passed the year before, but it was my grandmother's dream to always kind of get to the Met and see me at the Met. So she was able to come for opening night of Midsummer Night's Dream. And my family, as you know, my family is always involved in all the theater things that we do. So it was a beautiful family moment to have kind of my first big New York thing be at the Met. It was bringing kind of a full circle family kind of journey in a lot of ways. And my grandparents, who were born in Puerto Rico and then came to Brooklyn and then have this history with New York and let it kind of culminate in this experience at the cultural center that is the Met. It was really beautiful.
Awesome. That's beautiful.
I'm so excited, and I'm not even. I mean, I didn't know this. It's fantastic. So then you both moved or relocated to New York after you got your degrees, right? And
yeah, when I graduated college, which was, I did my college career in 3 years. I accelerated my studies and got out in 3 years with a degree.
Smart girl.
And then I went down to Disney World, and I was a kid of the kingdom in front of the castle. And that's where I got my equity card. So I was very fortunate that I was able to move to New York City with my equity card.
Yeah.
And so I moved to New York in February of 2001.
Oh,
Yeah.
just in time. Just
Yeah.
in time for when the
Just
other
for another crisis.
crazy time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and my journey in New York into theater was, you know, it was beautifully poetically difficult.
Nice.
I moved there in 2001, and I made my Broadway debut in January of 2005. And in between that, you know, I met you. I was at the Fireside. But my first year in New York, I worked at a magazine office, and I tried selling retail, and I hated it. And I tried waiting tables, and I am not a people person in that capacity. So, you know, and I fell into teaching for my survival job.
Yep.
And then I got my first New York job was a tour of Wizard of Oz that was directed by Phil McKinley.
Oh, Phil, sure.
Yeah. And because of that, they took me to the Fireside for the Fireside Christmas of 2002, which was the all-white Christmas.
Did he direct that one?
That was the last one he directed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Paula Lynn,
Yeah.
choreographer. And Paula Lynn knew me from my childhood when I was 10 years old doing dance competitions in Maryland. So because of those connections and the work I did on that, they said, oh, hey, we're doing a Christmas show in Wisconsin. We want you to do it. And I was like, okay. So that led to my Fireside life.
This truly points out the fact that there are no small connections. Everything you do in life is a stepping stone to something else. You couldn't predict that you probably wanted to be on Broadway, but you really can't predict how you're going to be in it. It's a flop. Well, so it's still Broadway, you know. But even the dance teacher back home, that's why they're so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Starting out and going to school and making the most out of all the opportunities. And because Shanna, you love dancing so much, that's why you were not in love with being a secretary or whatever, answering phones or whatever, or waiting tables. You said, my mother would always say, you do that job because it will make you really want to follow your dream.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, Christopher Gattelli, I met him when I first moved to New York, talking about connections. I ran into a girl on the street that I knew from my childhood, my youth. She was an actual pen pal where you would write letters and put them in the mail and send them to my sister. And we rizzo into her in the street. She's like, oh my God, you moved here? And I said, yes. And she said, oh, you should do this video with me. At the time, Bob Rizzo, who was a huge jazz master, still is, he put out these instructional videos. And she brought me in to do a musical theater dance with Christopher Gattelli. And at the time, he was just getting started choreographing for the Rosie O'Donnell show. He was still performing. And I stood up from stretching, and he said, I know you. And I was like, nope, I just moved here. It's so nice to meet you. He said, no, I know you. I saw you perform in 1996 at the Marriott Marquis in the Miss Dance of America competition. And I was in the back of the ballroom, and you took my breath away. And I was like, that was my sister. He said, no, it was you. Who described the song. And from that moment, doing a video I got paid with a leotard and a free pair of character shoes. Doing that with Christopher led me to, he said, well, I'm going to choreograph the opening number for the Easter Bonnet competition. Would you like to be in it and help me? And I said, yeah, of course. And he credited me as his assistant on that number. And just one thing led to another. And, here I am setting his Newsies choreography and
right. Just to let everybody know, because sometimes a choreographer names are not necessarily known, but everybody knows Newsies.
yes.
He did the original choreography for Newsies.
Yes.
This woman worked with him.
He's he's like my big brother, and we credit him for Justin was, flirting with me, and Christopher said, we were at the production table and he's like, that's a good one. That's the one. Oh. No. He brought me a cupcake on the production table and Christopher's like, that one.
Oh my God.
Very smooth.
Christopher was your yenta.
Yes, it was.
100%.
Totally. Yeah. So.
And that's great. So you guys, and you're there and you meet in New York and you're following your dreams or trying to make dreams come true and learning, new things, ropes. How did you get Wicked? Did you get that together? Did that come before Beauty and the Beast, or what's the deal? Tell me.
Beauty and the Beast was right after the Met. So I did the Met, and then I went and did like 6 months out on the Beauty and the Beast tour. There was somebody that left the production, so I came in to finish their initial contract. And then I decided to come back to New York after that. And Wicked, for me, I had been auditioning for Wicked like every year. They would go to replace Bach on Broadway, and I would be rolled in to audition. Like, this is my year. This is my year. And it was 7 years of auditioning for Wicked before it finally clicked, getting the tour.
7 years.
7 years.
That's how I felt every time we went down to the theater to get rush tickets. Or to do the lottery, and we never got them. For years.
I was just putting my lottery ticket in, like, here's my thing. Here's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm still doing this thing. Maybe it's right this time. But you had a history with Wicked earlier than that.
Yeah, my Wicked experience was I had been in for the show. I had been brought in for the show many, many times. And the cool thing about in the olden timey days when Wayne Salento would hold auditions is he never looked at your resume until after the second cut. He'd bring in the dancers, we'd go in 25, 30 at a time. You would dance it and he'd pull you out and say, okay, you stay. Not knowing who we were yet. I mean, some of them he knew at this point, right? But he didn't know who I was. And I had been in for Aida. I had gone in. I hadn't been brought in. I went to the equity open calls because I didn't have an agent. So I went to the equity open calls for Aida, and he would pull me. He would keep me through those, and then I would go to the open calls for Wicked. And then after going to several open calls, I got called in for the audition when they were doing the first round of replacements for Broadway, because all of those Broadway kids were going to go do Sweet Charity for Wayne. So at least half of the ensemble had opened up on Broadway, and they were casting the first national tour. So I was there and auditioned. I was there for like 6 hours, sang, and I didn't get it. And I was devastated, naturally. Yeah. And then I was pulled in January of 2005. They called and said, can you come in and try on costumes for an immediate replacement on Broadway? And I was like, yeah, I can. And it was 3 of us that were brought in. And the woman that I was replacing is Angela Bryden, and she's like 5 feet tall, nothing. And I'm 5'5". I'm not tall, but tall compared to Angela Bryden. And I put on our costumes. They all fit, width-wise, but height. I was like, oh, they fit. I pulled my arms in. I bent my knees. Like, it looks great. And then they sent us up to sing for Alex Lacamoire. And if people don't know who that is, Hamilton. Yep. He was the associate music director on the Broadway company of Wicked at this time. So I went in to sing for him, and they wanted me to belt the E flat at like some terrible green blizzard throughout the land she flies, the top of Act 2 solo, and I laughed at him. I was like, okay, we'll see. And I physically pushed it out of my diaphragm. And I think because I was, me, I don't know. And then the 2 days went by. I didn't get it. I didn't get a call. I didn't hear from them. Martin Luther King Day, I get a call Monday night at like 7:00 at night, and they said, "Can you start rehearsals tomorrow?" So I learned my first track in 4 days, and I made my debut in a blizzard on a Friday night.
Wow.
Yeah.
The process is a little fast, isn't it?
Well, yes.
For that situation, everybody's different, but the rehearsal process, if you're in it from the beginning, is a whole different story than when you have to come in and replace.
Right.
Similarly, then, so you were in that, and then when you join a tour, which is what you did, Justin, you joined in the tour as well, then how much time do you get when you join in to rehearse, that is?
Sure. Cut a couple years later, you were in and out of the business. You were ready to leave the business.
Yeah, I was ready to leave because I had done like 12 contracts on Broadway. They just kept, come in for this person, come in for that person.
Okay.
And then I didn't work for a year for anybody. No one wanted me. So I was ready to quit. And then they asked me to go dance captain the first national tour. And I was like, are you calling the right person? Because I haven't heard from you in like a year. And they're like, no, we want you to go. So I went out on tour in March of 2009.
Yep. I
learned the entire show, all 12 female roles, including principal roles, because I was in charge of teaching them as the dance captain, in 4 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
That was a huge data transfer. I learned the 8 tracks that I would perform, the 9 tracks that I would perform, I learned those in 3 weeks. And then I took another week to learn the principal women. And by this point, it was literally, here's the information. I was just writing it down. I started to get familiar with it the more I taught it. And then, so that was 4 weeks for me to learn an entire show. And then he came in the summer of 2009. They get 2.5 weeks to learn their ensemble track. Because he came in as the Bach cover at that time. So we had 2.5 weeks to learn his ensemble track. But his debut is a funny story. I'll let you tell that. And then he got another 2 weeks to learn Bach and did a whole other put in for that.
Oh, man. Lesson learned.
Debut.
Before we hear your story, lesson learned is that dancer, performer, actor, whatever, you better be secure in your technique, in your craft, because you most of the time do not have the luxury of taking time to learn. You are expected, here is the step, then you learn it, and then you're expected to be able to perform it the next day. Whatever.
100%. Yeah. Well, the training we get at places like the Fireside, where we have 2 weeks to get a show up, that really set me up, I think, for what I ended up doing with my life. Because you're there with me. You're sitting there next to me, Mary. It's like, we have to learn that show. We have to have that show set in a week so that they have 3 days to play with it, develop it, and then we tack it in a day and a half. Bonkers. Yeah. But that sort of timeline really trained me for having to learn. On Broadway, I would get called in an hour before half hour, and they would say, can you learn so-and-so's entire track?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? Broadway? No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not one weak person in those productions. The director wants the best people that they can put it together like that. So that Fireside is the same kind of thing, I suppose every once in a while you get a clunker. A chucklehead. But okay, tell us your story now, Justin, please.
Oh, brother. And just going off that point, I think it's super important for young performers, and now that I'm an educator trying to weave this into the process, is that it's not so important that everybody's process for learning is the same, but learning what exactly you need and how you get from point A to point B. It never has to look the same for every one of us, but it is your process to learn how you do it best. And whatever you need, be able to articulate that up front And however you learn, whatever your process is, you got to get there, because nobody, once it becomes about jobs and contracts and money, I think there's less importance put on how you get there and just importance put on that you get there. Yes. So you, as the young professional, have to learn, how do I get there to give this person what they need?
Good point. Good point. Absolutely. Whoa, good point.
As frequently happens on tour, there was a week, I think, where we had several people on vacation and some people out sick. So on our tour, we had 2 swings, two male identifying swings and 2 female identifying swings. And then we also had an alphaba standby on the tour. So for whatever reason, we were short a body potentially for this one night. And I had learned most of my ensemble track, and I felt pretty confident that I could do it to the best of my ability at the time. But there were some things that we hadn't done yet.
Technical elements.
There were some technical elements that I'd never actually worked with. So rather than cutting a track from the show, I said, I think I can do this. Do you feel confident letting me go on, even though there are some things that we haven't done with the set? And we all kind of, I think that's how it went. It was just like, all right, yeah, rather than cutting a track from the show and trying to like make the ensemble work with one less person, they tossed me on in the track. And there's an entrance when Glinda makes her first entrance into Shiz University. She comes in singing a very high note on a luggage cart. And I was so excited. I pushed the luggage cart on with Chandra Lee Schwartz on the luggage cart. And I didn't really see where I was supposed to stop it. So the way that the set was, it has an automatic like block to it so that you can't push the luggage cart into the orchestra. So I came running on with the luggage cart.
Which is heavy.
It's heavy. I slammed into the stopper, like the braking, and it knocked Chandra off the luggage cart. But she was very agile at the time and just kind of made it work with the soprano note that she was singing, woo, 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 and then landed on the stage. On her feet. So it was a very exciting entrance for all involved. I'm sure that inside my mask, my rat mask, I was pale and completely sweaty at the time. And thankfully, Chandra forgave me for tossing her off the luggage cart. And the rest is 3.5 years of.
Oh my gosh, that's too much. So you were with Wicked then for 4 years, is that right? But no, you were longer because you went on in it. But
I was on tour for almost 5 years.
Yeah.
I was on tour for almost 5 years. So prior to that, I think overall, it's been so long, but I think overall I had about 8 years in the world of Wicked total, including New York, the tour. They sent me to the Chicago company. They sent me to the other tour to help out. So yeah, I think I've had about 8 years of time in the Wicked world.
And I did about 3.5 years on tour, 3 years as Bach, and about 6 months in the ensemble. I did about 1,200 performances as Bach.
Oh, wow.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. With Stefano.
Oh, you break my heart.
So cute. He was so cute.
Just so adorable.
Also have
That's Stefano. Together.
Look at you guys. So touring can be exhausting.
Yep.
Right? Again, I'm the queen of understatements today. And of course, it's very lucrative. It can be, and can be very rewarding as well. But I think you guys, maybe you had enough of touring. I would think there's got to be a saturation point where you want to settle down. Or maybe it's age or something. I don't know. I've never done one of those long tours, so I don't really know. Did you then move to Chicago right after that, or? Well, you don't have to.
Many things happened kind of along the way. I think about 1.5 years into my time, there were some things within the industry and the representation that I had at the time. There were some things that happened with that in regards to a workshop I was involved with in New York that just had me reevaluate. There was also some family things that just had me kind of reevaluating priorities and sacrifices. Right.
Yes.
To be in the industry and to continue to pursue it at a high level, there's a certain amount of personal sacrifice that is inherent in that. And hustle of New York life, the continual pushing for jobs and sacrificing family events and things like that. I think that that's all part of the picture. And at that time, we were both around 30.
We were past 30.
We were past 30. So I think we were both just sort of evaluating, finding a calmer rhythm of life.
Yeah. Sure, totally.
And we still knew that we wanted to be involved in the arts. We knew that, or we could sense that teaching was in our path in the future.
Uh-huh.
I think that we also knew that we weren't done with being involved in the industry. I think we still had like a little bit of performing and a little bit of creative side of things, like directing, choreographing was in the back of our minds as something possibly was in the future. And Chicago is a bit of a slower pace of life from New York, but still so much artistic involvement, both on the educational side of things and as a theatrical community. And we had so many friends that kept saying what a vibrant, beautiful community of theater makers it was. And at the same time, some friends of ours were looking to relocate from their home, and we came and stayed with them, and we ended up buying their home from them because we were also looking to settle down. We wanted to unpack our bags and not live in an apartment in the city anymore. Sure. And all of that kind of converged all at once. Mm-hmm. And touring life is exciting and it's wonderful, and you're in new places and new cities. But after a couple of years, that reestablishment of your roots, that every couple of weeks trying to re-find your grounding as a human, in addition to trying to do 8 shows a week and perform for thousands of people and the pressure of all of that, it just kind of wears on you after a while. And after a couple of years, I think we were both,
you make such a valid point about having to reevaluate. Like every decade of your life or so, you reevaluate. You do what you can in your 20s, what your 30s. And you don't know what lies ahead, so you just have to. You cannot predict. Look at us now. What's going to be in store for us? So you simply have to reevaluate. And that's why I'm always curious as to why you chose Chicago, but you were familiar with it. You had friends for all the reasons you said. Well, I'm certainly glad that you're nearby, especially having Shanna come up and choreograph at Fireside, as often as she does. And when she doesn't come, I'm nervous. But anyway, so now that you're in Chicago, and you've changed from this life on the road and the hustle and bustle of New York and getting those performing gigs because they're dancing, or the choreography, the assistant choreography that you were doing in there. So now you're in Chicago. How have you guys made that transition into what you are doing today? Was it a big struggle? Or did it just feel like a natural progression?
It's kind of in between. I think that for me, teaching was always in the cards, and I taught Wicked 150 times.
Yeah.
Well, I actually stopped counting at 150. So there's more. And the different types of
people on the show.
Well, that's including like swings, all their swing tracks, all their covers, and you're dealing with so many different processes of how people learn, like Justin was saying, and that taught me so much in how I could help, at the collegiate level. And then assisting on Amazing Grace on Broadway, which was a cast of complete singers. I think I had 2, I had like 4 or 5 that were dancers, but everyone else in that show were like true singers who move, and getting them to feel comfortable. Not only the English company is not only engaging in this different sort of form dance, Baroque form dancing, but they're also in these super heavy costumes and super bound up, with their panniers and their long trains, and the men in the coats, the waistcoats and all of that stuff, helping them find their way through that. And that taught me a lot on how different people learn and take things in. so I knew that teaching was in my future. In terms of choreography, I loved assisting because I love problem solving, and I am so great at delegating and finding, picking my battles and doing the things. And when someone says, go fix that, I'm like, okay. Because there were times on tour where the associate director would come in, Lisa Laguio, and she'd say, Shanna, go fix that. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. I'll just go fix something. And you got to figure it out. So I loved doing that. And it wasn't until Ed said to me, we lost the choreographer for Singing in the Rain. I want you to do it. And I said, really? And he said, Shanna, this is your show. You have more experience than you need. You're going to be great. This is right up your alley. I believe in you. You can do this. And I was like, okay, can I still be Lady in Green? And he said, of course. So, I mean, truth be told, if it weren't for Ed pushing me into doing that, I would not be in the path that I'm in right now. Because it took him telling me, you can do this, and challenging me to do that. And then, continuing to bring me in for more and more shows. And every time, even the craziest ones, I learn something. And, he has really sort of helped me find my voice as a choreographer. So that, to answer your question in a very long way, oh, thanks, Kayce. I think that Yoav, oh my goodness, hello. I think it was presented to me, and it was my choice to get on that train. Yes. And from there, it's been hard, and trying to find my voice here in Chicago as a choreographer, and finding people that will trust me to do it. And I've been here long enough that they don't think that I come from New York anymore. So they'll bring in someone from New York, where I'm sitting here from New York, but they don't know that. They don't think that anymore.
Yeah, I understand that completely.
Yeah. Totally. So that, trying to find that path here has been, it's tricky and it's frustrating, but that's, that's what it is, right? That's this life.
Right. You hang in there. I mean, everybody who knows you knows that you're spectacular. When we made the announcement that you were going to be on here, sorry, Justin, we'll come back to you in a second. I mean, and this girl says, oh my God, I follow her on Instagram. She's amazing. You don't even know that person. So, I mean, that's what I mean. And hey, and the thing is, bring you in to fix it. I mean, you get thrown that at the fireside all the time. Ed'll say, oh, fix that. You give me that look, you start to giggle. Your eyes wide open, and move on. You have to fix it. And I just sit there in awe of you. I just think it's amazing how you fix things. Do you fix things, Justin?
Not like she can.
You're a damn good listener, though. So you would, really, really good. You're one of the best listeners I know, and you're proving it here these last minutes or so. Well, unfortunately, we don't know when we will be back at Fireside.
I know,
or any place else. So with people that want to, like students who would like to go into this business, if there is any business to go into, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here, because I really believe if we don't have hope, we have nothing. And I do have hope. That's about the only thing I still have these days is hope.
And wine.
Oh, yeah. It's great living with my daughter.
We have here.
So, but would there be any kind of advice that you could give people to what they can do during this time, and how there still is a future, and how you can look toward that?
you usually have really poetic words, so I'm going to go first so that you can make it sound pretty at the end. He uses his teacher words, and I'm like, huh.
Great language.
But my advice is
to not,
like you're saying, like, don't give up hope. Realize that we are all in this period of maintenance. Right? Like, one of my dear friends teaches down at the High School of Performing Arts in Houston, and she teaches dance, and her kids are wigging out because they're so disciplined, and they're so used to going to summer intensives, and they're freaking out like, I'm not going to improve. And she's like, you guys, no one is expecting anyone to be any better when they get out of this, right? Like, she says, she's like, tennis is going to look like ping pong, and baseball is going to look like t-ball. Like, even professional athletes, we're all in this maintenance mode. So doing what we can to maintain where we are. Like, I'm doing my open classes on Zoom so that people can just dance. Do I expect anyone to all of a sudden magically be able to do quadruple pirouettes? Absolutely not. I don't even put those in my choreography, so let's be real. But you can still move. You can still keep that blood flowing and those juices flowing, and you can still find a way to maintain your skill, right? And same thing with voice. Like, do your vocal warm-ups, sing through your books. Same thing with getting those skills ready for video submissions, because when it does come back, it's gonna be video submissions, singing, dancing, acting, all of it, right? So getting used to finding a way to help your craft move into this next layer of being used to learning off of a video, putting yourself on video, making sure you look nice when you put yourself on video, and just sort of finding little ways to maintain it. And pre-pandemic, I would still tell people, and I stand by this, if there is anything else on the planet you could possibly think of doing, then you should do it. But if there isn't anything else on the planet that you could possibly think of doing, because I've tried to quit 3 or 4 times in my life. And every time I'm like, what else could I do? I like to read. What else could I do? I like to do this. But I can't quit it. I just can't, and so if you can find something else, because this is hard. It was hard pre-pandemic. So it's
gonna be even harder.
It's gonna be even harder.
So you gotta know that this is the life for you. And if it isn't, that's okay too. Right? Like, it's okay if we learn through all of this that what we thought we were gonna do 3 months ago isn't what we want to do anymore. That's okay.
Sure.
Okay,
you don't necessarily have to aim for the big stage. Because I really believe that we've got to do things more in our communities and beef up our communities with quality.
I was talking to a friend of mine from Broadway, and he was saying that he believes that regional theater is going to be able to come back prior to big Broadway stuff.
That is the talk.
Yeah.
So embracing that, and like I said before, the work we do at the Fireside trained me for Broadway, but Broadway, those big things, you get 4 weeks to rehearse a show, but it's also corporate. Whereas in our 2 weeks of putting up a show, it's got heart. Like, it always comes from a place of heart, and it comes from a place of passion. And that is so beautiful.
Yes.
People love it on Broadway, but it's more about the dollar signs than it is anything else. It's about the investment, and I don't know, make it pretty.
You said a lot. You said all the good stuff. I think balance is the first word that comes in, because nothing is going to look the same as it did before in terms of the professional pursuit of this occupation. So being able to find balance for yourself as a creative, I think, is truly more important at this point than those sort of success-oriented goals that we were attached to as a business previously. And, like, ways of thinking about how you can be a creator of stories and a creator of content rather than waiting for the content to come to you. I think that will put you on a path to be ready when the time comes for these things to open. Because it's going to be about more people in the room that are gathered to tell the story than more people in a room that are there to sell tickets. So if you are a person that adds to the cycle of being a creative that creates the story and engages in mindful storytelling, that brings more inclusivity and representational ideas to the table, like that is going to be a vibrant room that people are going to participate in. And I think that's what's going to set us all up for more things in the future. And find, like, mindfully getting back to the idea of balance. We don't have to progress every minute of every day. Is today a day where you need to take more care of yourself? Self-care, like active self-care, not just sitting and watching Netflix, which I do as well. But like that idea of active self-care. And if that's a day where you really engage in active self-care, then you're going to come to the next day with your creative practice that much more ready and vibrant. Yeah. So I think balance is the key word thinking moving forward. And to what you spoke about, like be a human first, and then your creative and professional pursuits will only be that much more richer when you walk into the room.
Yeah. Oh, you guys! Oh, who knew you were so philosophical? But you know what? You may really, I got a little verklempt. Yeah. You guys, you both have such heart. And you always bring heart into everything you do.
We love you, Mary.
We love you, Mary.
And you have the uncanny ability to uplift people so that they can do their best. It does, like you, Shanna, you so often said, I don't care how high you kick that leg, just kick the leg. Or there's the children in Annie. Don't do it. Or no, it was the children in it was the Christmas Story. You know.
Yeah.
Just do it. In practice. Practice. I mean, you're no nonsense stuff. But the thing is, you both care so much, and now you remind us all the balance, the heart. You gotta love it. And just be able to go with the flow. Oh my God, miles and miles of heart. Wow. All right. You guys, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, this has been so wonderful and so fun.
Oh, thanks for having us and doing this.
Nice to see you guys. Mwah. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care of yourselves. Sending you love.
You but love back.
Thank you, Shanna and Justin. That was wonderful. Just sobbing.
I'm such a schmuck.
Thank you so much for joining us. And if you are able to make a donation to your favorite local theater group, performing arts group, dancing group, any kind of arts group, especially local, please do. And we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place, I think with another fireside friend.
Oh.
Stage manager, MJ.
MJ Bernhardt.
A completely different side of theater.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.
I love theater. Mwah.